was nearly midnight, and I was still at my desk. The hum of my computer was the only sound in the office, apart from the occasional creak of the old ventilation system. Everyone had left hours ago. Just me, the fluorescent lights, and the never-ending spreadsheet I was supposed to finish before morning. The silence wasn't peaceful. It felt thick, like something unseen was pressing against it, waiting for the right moment to break through. I kept telling myself it was just exhaustion. The mind plays tricks when you're alone too long. I stretched my arms, sighing, and glanced at the office door. It was slightly ajar. Strange. I always closed it when I worked late. Maybe the cleaning staff had come in and left it that way. I got up and pushed it shut, making sure it latched. Back at my desk, the overhead lights flickered. My heart skipped. Just old wiring. It happened before. But then I saw something in my monitor's reflection. A shadow moving behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Just rows of empty desks stretching into the dimly lit hallway. My pulse pounded in my ears. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. I forced myself to focus, typing faster. The sooner I finished, the sooner I could leave. But then, tap, 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 soft, deliberate. Footsteps. I froze, listening. The sound came from the hallway, slow, unhurried. I turned my head slightly, just enough to see the reflection in my screen. A shape, dark, standing at the edge of the hall, watching. My breath caught in my throat. I swiveled my chair in one quick motion. Nothing there. The hallway was empty. I swallowed hard, laughing nervously to myself. Just stress. Just my tired mind. But I wasn't so sure anymore. I checked my phone. Past midnight. I needed to leave, now. Gathering my things, I stood up, forcing myself not to look down the hallway again. I grabbed my bag, turned off my computer, and reached for the door handle. It wouldn't budge. The lock wasn't engaged. Nothing was blocking it. But no matter how hard I pulled, the door refused to open. Then I heard it, right behind me. Breathing. The breathing was deep, slow, right behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Every nerve in my body screamed for me to run, to break the door down if I had to. But I couldn't move. My fingers trembled against the door handle, my throat dry, my heartbeat hammering so hard I could barely hear anything else. Then, tap, tap, tap. Footsteps, moving away this time, slow, unhurried, like whoever or whatever it was knew I had nowhere to go. I forced myself to turn, my stomach twisting into knots. The office was empty, but I knew it wasn't. The lights flickered again, longer this time. The bulbs buzzed, struggling to stay on. My phone. I scrambled to pull it from my pocket, my fingers slipping against the screen. No signal, no Wi-Fi. Just a black screen where my bars should have been. Click. The sound came from the far end of the office, one of the cubicles. Then another. Click. A keyboard. Keys being pressed. Someone was typing. No one was supposed to be here. My breathing came in short gasps. My legs felt like lead, but I forced myself to move, stepping carefully between the rows of desks. The glow of a monitor shone at the far end. The only screen still on. Letters filled the empty document. I squinted, my stomach dropping as I read. I see you. A chill ran down my spine. My hands trembled as I reached for the mouse. The cursor moved on its own, deleting the words one by one. Then, letter by letter, it typed something new. Turn around. No, I wouldn't. A cold breath brushed against my ear. I ran, bolted toward the emergency exit at the far end of the room. My footsteps pounded against the carpet, my breath ragged. My fingers hit the push bar. It didn't move. I slammed my shoulder into it, desperate, my skin crawling with the feeling of something right behind me. Then the lights went out. The darkness swallowed everything. No glow from the monitors. No street lights through the windows. Just black. Heavy. Suffocating. I pressed myself against the door, heart hammering. My breath came in short, shaky gasps. The air felt different, thicker, like something unseen had filled the room. Then I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Footsteps, slow, moving toward me. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay still. Maybe if I didn't move, it wouldn't see me. Maybe, bang, something slammed onto a desk. I flinched, biting down on a scream. The footsteps started again, closer now, unhurried, enjoying this. Then, breathing. Not mine, something else. Wet, raspy, too close. I squeezed my eyes shut. It was right there. Inches away, I could feel it. The space around me felt wrong, like the air itself had weight, a presence pressing against my skin. Go. A whisper. The voice was thin, almost fragile, but it wasn't human. It didn't sound like it came from a mouth. It came from everywhere, from inside my own head. A hand. Cold. Dead. Brushed against my arm. That was it. I snapped. I threw myself forward, running blind, crashing into desks, stumbling through the darkness. My foot caught on something. A chair, a cable. I fell hard, hitting my knee against the floor. Pain shot up my leg. Behind me, something dragged itself forward. I scrambled to my feet, my hands outstretched, searching for anything. A way out. Then, light. The glow of an exit sign cut through the dark. I ran, full speed. My shoulder slammed into the stairwell door, and this time, it opened. I didn't stop, didn't look back. I took the stairs, 2 at a time, lungs burning, legs screaming. Down, down, down. The lobby was empty. The glass doors stood open. The night air was cold against my skin. I ran to my car, fumbling with my keys, hands shaking so bad I could barely unlock the door. I started the engine. Tires screeched as I sped away, heart still racing, hands locked tight around the wheel. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I couldn't. But as I turned onto the main road, my phone buzzed. A notification. One unread message. I see you tomorrow. I quit the next day. But sometimes, late at night when I'm alone, I swear I can still hear it. The breathing. Right behind me. The office was never empty. It started with the sounds. Soft at first. Just little clicks and rustles above the ceiling tiles. The kind of noises you'd chalk up to rats, or maybe old pipes settling in the walls. I barely noticed them at first. I worked overnight security at an office building. A quiet job, mostly just walking the halls, checking doors, making sure no one had snuck in. The place was nearly empty after 9 p.m., just the hum of the vending machines and the low buzz of the emergency lights. But then, one night I heard it clearer, a shuffling sound, right above me. I stopped in my tracks, staring up at the ceiling. The vents ran all across the building, metal grates screwed into the ceiling every few feet. I listened. Nothing. I told myself it was nothing. A raccoon, maybe. The janitor had mentioned something about the maintenance crew finding nests in the vents before. Still, something about it didn't sit right. Hours passed. The halls stretched long and empty, shadows pooling under the flickering lights. My radio crackled, nothing but static. Then, a clang. Loud, heavy. Right above my head. I jumped, heart pounding. I looked up just in time to see one of the vent grates shift. Only an inch. Just enough to let out a small puff of dust. I stood frozen, staring. My hand drifted toward my flashlight, but I didn't dare turn it on. Then I saw it. Fingers. Pale, pale, clutching the edge of the vent from the inside. My breath caught in my throat. They slid back into the darkness, disappearing without a sound. I didn't move for a long time, didn't breathe. The hallway felt colder now, the air tight around my chest. And then, softly, barely above a whisper, I heard it. A breath, coming from the vent, right above me. I backed away slowly. My legs felt weak, every instinct screaming at me to run, but I didn't. Not yet. I needed to be sure. The vent was just a shadow now, blending into the ceiling, but I knew something, some One was up there, watching, waiting. The hallway stretched empty behind me. No cameras in this part of the building. No one else on shift. Just me. I reached for my radio, fingers shaking. "Dispatch, this is Carter. I think there's someone in the vents." Static. I tried again. "Dispatch, do you copy?" Click. Not from the radio. From above, I looked up. The vent was open wider now. No fingers this time, just blackness. I stepped back. My breathing was too loud. The air was too thick. Then I saw them. Eyes, wide, unblinking, reflecting just enough light to glint in the darkness. A face, half hidden behind the metal slats. The skin was stretched too tight, too pale. The mouth just a thin, unmoving line. No expression, just staring. I took another step back. My foot hit something, a bucket from the janitor's closet. It tipped, crashing to the floor with a loud bang. The thing moved, not climbed. Scrambled. A horrible, jerky motion. Hands and feet slamming against the inside of the vents, metal groaning under the weight. It was fast. I turned and ran. Down the hall, toward the security room. My key card fumbled in my hands, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind me, clangs, the vents rattling, the thing following. I didn't stop to look. I reached the door, swiped my card. Hey, beep, green light. I threw myself inside and slammed it shut. Silence, only my panting breath, the hum of the monitors, then scratching from the air vent inside the security room. My stomach dropped. My eyes locked onto the grate near the ceiling. Slowly, it began to slide open. The vent slid open. I couldn't breathe. My back pressed against the security desk. The monitors flickered, casting pale light against the ceiling. Against the thing now crawling out of the vent. Long, bony arms. Pale, stretched skin. Its fingers curled over the edge, pulling its body forward in a slow, jerky motion. It didn't move like a person. It twisted, its limbs bending at wrong angles, head lolling to one side. The eyes never blinked. Just wide, black pits locked onto me. I wanted to scream. I couldn't. My voice was gone, stolen by the terror sinking deep into my chest. The thing dropped. It landed on all fours, its limbs smacking the floor with a wet, sickening thud. It was close now. Too close. I lunged for the door. My hands fumbled for the knob. Locked. My key card. Where was my key card? A sharp breath. Behind me. I turned. It was standing, too tall. Its head tilted, bones cracking as it moved. Its mouth stretched open, but there were no lips. Just a gaping, hollow space. Then it spoke. Not words. Not a voice. A sound. A low, rattling click, like something trying to mimic human speech but getting it wrong. I threw myself at the desk, grabbed the nearest object, my flashlight, and swung. The light hit its face, a horrible shriek. Inhuman, deafening. The thing reeled back, clawing at its eyes. I didn't think. I ran. Key card! I snatched it off the desk, my hands shaking. The thing lunged. I swiped the card. Beep! The door unlocked. I ripped it open and sprinted down the hall. Behind me, crashing, claws scraping metal, a furious, distorted wail. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I hit the stairwell, my feet slamming against the steps, taking them two at a time. My lungs burned, my vision blurred, the exit so close. I burst through the doors, into the freezing night air. The parking lot was empty. Silent. I jumped into my car, hands fumbling with the keys, engine roaring to life. My tires screeched as I tore out of the lot, my heart slamming against my ribs. In my rearview mirror, the building, dark, still. The open vent above the security door, and something inside it, watching. I never went back. A month later, the office shut down. Structural issues, they said. Employees reported strange noises. A worker went missing. They never found him. But I know the truth. There was something in the vents, and it's still there. I should have known it was too good to be true. I was broke, rent was overdue, my fridge was empty, and my car was barely running. So when I saw the Craigslist ad, night shift, warehouse assistant, no experience needed, $500 cash per night, I jumped on it. The guy responded fast. No interview, no background check, just a time and place, midnight, an old warehouse on the outskirts of town. That should have been the first red flag. The warehouse was deep in an industrial area, surrounded by chain-link fences and flickering streetlights. I parked outside and checked my phone. No signal. A single light glowed above the warehouse entrance. The door was slightly open. I stepped inside. The place was nearly empty, just rows of unused shelves and the faint scent of oil and dust. At the far end, an office door stood open, spilling yellow light onto the concrete floor. A man sat behind a desk, late 40s, pale, wearing an old flannel. His fingers tapped against the desk as I walked in. He didn't smile, didn't introduce himself. "You're here for the job," he said. Something about his voice felt off, like he was forcing himself to sound normal. I nodded. Yeah. He slid a clipboard toward me. "Sign this first. No company name, no job description, just a blank form asking for my name, phone number, and emergency contact. Red flag number 2. I hesitated. So, what exactly am I doing? The man leaned forward, his lips curled slightly, not a smile. "Just moving boxes," he said. "Nothing hard. But you can't leave until the shift ends." Something in my gut twisted. I looked around the office. No security cameras, no windows. And then I noticed it. Another clipboard on a shelf behind him. A stack of signed forms, at least a dozen. Too many. Where were the other workers? A soft thud echoed from the warehouse behind me. I turned fast, my pulse spiking. Nothing. But suddenly the warehouse didn't feel empty anymore. I forced a smile, gripping the clipboard tighter. How many people work here?" The man's expression didn't change. His fingers tapped the desk. Tap, tap, tap. "Just you tonight." Something about the way he said it made my stomach turn. I glanced at the other clipboards again. At least 12 names, but the warehouse was empty. Another thud, this time closer. I turned toward the warehouse, trying to keep my breathing steady. The rows of shelves stretched into the shadows, barely touched by the dim overhead lights. The man stood up. "Come on, I'll show you what you're moving." He walked ahead, leaving the office door wide open. I hesitated before following. The air felt thicker in the warehouse, like the walls were holding something in. The boxes were stacked near the far wall, identical and unlabeled. Old wood, heavy looking. Some were stained, dark blotches seeped into the grain. "What's inside?" I asked. The man's lips twitched. "Not your concern. Red flag number 3. I bent down, gripping the edge of one of the boxes. It was cold, too cold, like it had been sitting in a freezer. Then, it moved. I yanked my hand back, heart slamming against my ribs. I hadn't imagined it. Something inside shifted, scraping, a slow, deliberate scratch against the wood. The man's gaze snapped to me. "You start now," he said. His voice was different, sharper, almost eager. I took a step back. I think I need to know what I'm handling." Another scratch, this time louder, like nails dragging against the inside of the box. The man grinned, wide, too wide. His teeth were wrong, sharp and too many. "You'll find out," he whispered. The lights flickered. Then, the boxes began to shake. The boxes shook harder, thudding, scraping. Whatever was inside wasn't trying to get out. It knew it was coming out. I backed away, my pulse hammering. What the hell is in those boxes? The man just stood there, smiling. His hands twitched at his sides, his fingers flexing like he was holding something invisible. "They were like you," he whispered. Were. The lights flickered again, but this time they didn't come back on. Total darkness. Then the lids began to creak open. I didn't wait. I ran. Blind in the dark, I crashed into shelves, metal rattling around me. The office. I just had to get back to the office. The door. My car. Out. Behind me, I heard it. Not footsteps. Slithering. A wet, dragging sound that didn't match the weight of the boxes. Too fast. Too many. I hit the office door, slamming it shut behind me. My fingers fumbled for the lock. Click. Silence. My breath came in short, ragged gasps. I pressed my back against the door, my hands shaking. I needed my keys, my phone, anything. Then a whisper. Help me. I froze. It was coming from the other side of the desk. I turned slowly, my blood like ice. The room was dim, only the emergency light outside casting a pale glow through the window. Then I saw them, the clipboards. They weren't on the shelf anymore, they were scattered across the desk, and on each one, a name was scratched out, except one. Mine. A shudder ran through me. My chest felt tight, my hands going numb. Then the whisper came again, closer. You were never meant to leave. The light outside flickered. For a split second, I saw the glass reflect something behind me. Not the man, something else. Something tall, twisted, grinning. And then, the door unlocked itself. The last thing I heard before everything went dark. The sound of another box sliding open. I was desperate for a place to live. My old lease was up, my savings were thin, and every decent apartment was out of my budget. So when I found a Craigslist listing for a fully furnished room, only $300 a month, I didn't hesitate. It seemed too good to be true. The ad was simple. Quiet tenant wanted. No loud music. No overnight guests. Just be respectful and we'll get along fine. The photos showed a clean, modest room with a bed, a desk, and a window facing the city skyline. The landlord, James, responded quickly. No credit check, no deposit. Just first month's rent in cash. Come by tonight, he said. I'll show you the place. That was red flag number one, but I ignored it. I arrived just after 9 p.m. The house was old but well kept, tucked between two apartment buildings on a quiet street. The porch light flickered. James opened the door before I even knocked. Tall, thin, too thin. His eyes were dark, sunken deep into his pale face. He didn't smile. You're here, he said, stepping aside. Come in. The inside was eerily quiet. No TV, no music. Just the low hum of the refrigerator somewhere in the back. The place smelled off. Not rotten, but stale. Like air that hadn't moved in a long time. I followed him down the hall. The door to my new room was already open. It looked exactly like the photos. Bed, desk, window. But something about it felt wrong. I couldn't put my finger on it. James stood behind me, watching. I swallowed hard. So, any other tenants? He shook his head. Just you and me? My skin prickled. The hallway light flickered. For a second, the shadows in the room seemed too deep, too stretched. Then I noticed it. A second door in the far corner of my room. The Craigslist ad hadn't mentioned a second door. I turned to James, my stomach tightening. What's that? His face was blank. That? He glanced at the door. Oh, that's nothing. A pause. You won't open it. It wasn't a warning. It was a fact. I stared at the door. It was plain, painted the same off-white as the rest of the room, but something about it felt off. The handle was old brass, scratched and worn, used. James stood behind me, his shadow stretching long in the dim light. You won't open it, he repeated. His voice was flat, empty. I forced a laugh, trying to shake the unease curling in my gut. Why? What's in there? He didn't answer. I turned to face him, expecting some kind of explanation, maybe even a joke. But his expression had changed. His lips were slightly parted. His eyes weren't looking at me anymore. He was looking past me, right at the door. Something about the way he stared made my skin crawl. "Look," I said, forcing a casual tone. "If this is some kind of storage closet, I don't mind. I just wasn't expecting a second door in my room." James blinked, like he had forgotten I was there. His lips moved, but his voice was lower this time. It wasn't always there. A chill spread through me. "What do you mean?" He blinked again, like snapping out of a trance. "Just don't open it." He forced a smile, but it was wrong. Stretched, too many teeth. "It's nothing to worry about." Then he turned and left. I didn't move. The silence in the house felt heavier now, like the walls were pressing in. I looked back at the door. It didn't belong. I walked up to it, pressing my ear against the wood. Silence. No wind, no pipes, nothing. Just heavy, thick stillness. But the closer I got, the colder the air felt. I reached for the handle. My fingers hovered over the brass. My stomach tightened. Every part of me screamed, "Don't touch it." Then, knock from the other side. I stumbled backward, my breath catching. My back hit the wall, my heart slammed against my ribs. I waited, frozen. Nothing. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe... Knock, knock, knock. Slow, deliberate. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. Then, in the hallway, I heard footsteps. James. But they weren't coming toward my room. They were walking away, leaving me alone with the door. That shouldn't be there. I didn't move. The air felt wrong, too still, too thick, like the room was holding its breath. The knocks had stopped, but I felt something behind the door, waiting, listening. James's footsteps faded down the hall. He wasn't coming back. I reached for my phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi, of course. I stared at the door. Every instinct in my body screamed, "Leave it alone." I should have, but I didn't. Click. I hadn't touched it, but the handle turned on its own. A sharp, slow creak as the door cracked open. Just an inch. My breath caught in my throat. No room, no closet, just a black void. A low sound leaked out. Not quite a voice, not quite a whisper. Something trying to form words. "Let me borrow your skin." I stumbled backward. No, no, no. The door opened wider. The air turned freezing. My breath came out in thick white puffs. My vision blurred. I felt light, like something was pulling at me, pulling me in. Then a hand shot out, thin, gray, twisted fingers too long, curling at unnatural angles, nails black and cracked. I screamed. I grabbed the nearest thing, the lamp from my nightstand, and threw it. The moment the lamp hit the floor, the lights flickered back on, and the door was closed. The air was warm again. My breath was normal, like nothing had happened, but the handle was still moving, slowly locking itself. I stood there, shaking, my stomach in knots. Then, a whisper from inside the door. "See you soon." I ran. Out of the room, down the hall, past the kitchen where James stood perfectly still, staring at nothing. I didn't stop. I grabbed my bag and bolted out the front door, into the cold night air. I didn't care about my deposit. I didn't care that my car was covered in frost. I just drove. I didn't stop until I was miles away. I never went back. I don't know if someone else moved in. I don't know if James ever looked away from that empty space in the kitchen. But I know this. The room is still listed, same price, same photos. But now, at the bottom of the ad, there's a new rule added. Don't knock on the second door, and never, ever open. The moment I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. It wasn't the peeling wallpaper or the musty air. It wasn't even the strange cold spots that clung to certain rooms. It was something else, something I couldn't name, but I ignored it. I had just bought my first home, a fixer-upper on Blackwood Lane. Cheap, secluded, exactly what I wanted. The previous owners had moved out suddenly, but I didn't ask questions. I should have. The first night, I barely slept. The house made noises. At first, I chalked it up to old pipes and settling wood, but as the night stretched on, the sounds grew stranger, A soft, steady inhale, then a long, slow exhale, like the house itself was breathing. I told myself it was the wind, but the windows were shut, the vents were sealed. Still, the breathing continued. By the second night, I noticed something else. The furniture had moved, subtle at first. My chair slightly off-center, the kitchen cabinet open an inch wider, the mirror in the hallway tilted just enough to distort my reflection. I shook it off. Maybe I did it without thinking. Then I found the note, tucked inside the kitchen drawer, yellowed with age, shaky handwriting. Do not stay after midnight. It sees you when you sleep. My stomach dropped. I checked my phone. 11:56 p.m. A creak echoed from upstairs. Someone was in the house. I stood frozen, gripping the note. The creak had come from upstairs. I was alone? At least, I thought I was. My pulse pounded in my ears as I forced myself to move, stepping carefully toward the staircase. Each step groaned under my weight, the air growing colder with every inch I climbed. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched out in eerie silence. Something felt off. The space seemed longer than before, like the house was stretching, shifting. I reached my bedroom door. It was open. I was sure I had closed it. I stepped inside, my breath catching in my throat. My bed wasn't where I left it. It had moved, pushed against the far wall. The mirror, too. It hung at an odd angle, reflecting something that shouldn't be there. A figure, tall, thin, just standing in the corner. I spun around, nothing. But the moment I turned back to the mirror, the figure was closer. I stepped back, my body going numb. The whisper came before I could move. You're in the wrong place. I ran. Down the stairs, through the darkened hallway, my breath coming in sharp gasps. The air felt thick like moving through water. The walls shifted. The hallway stretched longer. The front door was gone. Only darkness ahead. Then, a hand reached out from the wall, pale, thin, fingers too long, curling toward me. I stumbled backward. The whisper came again. It sees you when you sleep. Then the floor collapsed beneath me. I fell. The floor beneath me gave way, and I plummeted into darkness. Not a basement, not another room. Something deeper. The air felt thick, like I was sinking into a space that shouldn't exist. My ears rang. My breath came in short, ragged gasps. The house wasn't just shifting, it was alive. I landed hard on something soft, not wood, not concrete. It moved beneath me. I scrambled to my feet, my fingers pressing into the surface. Warm, damp, like skin. The walls breathed, expanding, contracting, a slow, sickening inhale. Then I heard it, the whispers. Not one voice, dozens. It keeps us here. You should have left. It's watching. The voices came from the walls, from inside them. I turned, trying to find a way out. The space around me stretched, twisted. The only light came from above the hole I had fallen through, but it was closing. I ran. I had to get out. The ground rippled beneath my feet, like something massive was moving underneath. Then, from the darkness, hands. Dozens of them. They reached for me from the shifting walls, clawing, pulling me back. I fought, kicking, thrashing. The whispers grew frantic. It won't let you go. The ceiling was almost shut. I had seconds. With everything in me, I jumped. My fingers caught the edge, nails scraping against splintered wood. The hands gripped my legs, pulling me down. I screamed, kicking wildly. Then, a voice. Not from the walls, from above. Let go! James. I looked up. He stood over the hole, staring down, expressionless, waiting. The house shuddered. The hands tightened. James whispered again, "If you fight, it takes you." His voice was empty, like he had seen this before. I knew in that moment I had two choices. Stay, or let the house take me. I let go. I didn't fall. I woke up. I gasped, my body drenched in sweat. Sunlight streamed through the bedroom window. Morning. The house looked normal. The floor was intact, no shifting walls, no whispers. But when I looked at the door, it wasn't my bedroom door anymore. It was the front door, wide open, like the house was letting me go. I grabbed my bag, my keys, and ran. I didn't stop driving until I was miles away. When I finally pulled over, hands still shaking, I grabbed my phone and searched for the address. The listing was gone. No record of the house ever being for sale, but I found something else. A missing persons case. James Carter. Vanished inside the house 8 years ago, but I had seen him. He had spoken to me. Then I read the last sentence in the article. James was never found, but new owners report seeing a man standing in the hallway at night. I slammed my phone down. I don't know who or what helped me escape, but I know this. That house isn't empty, and it's waiting for someone new. The house was too cheap. I should have questioned it more. A 3-bedroom home for half the market price, fully furnished. In this economy, it didn't make sense. But I needed a fresh start. New city, new life, and this house, this deal, felt like fate. The realtor barely spoke as she handed me the keys. Just gave a tight smile and said, "You're the first one who lasted this long." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. The first night was quiet, too quiet. I didn't hear creaky pipes, no rustling trees against the windows, just nothing, like the house was holding its breath. I fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from the move. Sometime around 2 a.m., I woke up cold, not just normal cold, freezing. I reached for the blanket. It wasn't there. I looked down. The blanket was neatly folded at the foot of the couch. I didn't do that. I sat up, my skin prickling. The air felt heavy, thick, like something else was in the room with me. I told myself I was just tired, but as I stood up, I caught a glimpse of the hallway mirror, and I saw it, a shape, standing behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly lost my balance. Nothing. The room was empty. Just me, the couch, and the dim glow of the kitchen light. But I knew what I saw. The shape in the mirror. Tall, thin, standing perfectly still. Watching. My breath came out in shaky bursts. I grabbed my phone, the bright screen making me feel a little less alone. No service, of course. I needed to shake this feeling. It was just my imagination, exhaustion playing tricks on me. I went to the kitchen for water. As I passed the hallway, I noticed something. The bedroom door was open. I hadn't opened it. I stopped, my stomach tightening. The door had been shut when I went to sleep, I was sure. Now it was wide open. I stepped closer, peering into the room. The light from the hallway barely cut through the darkness, but I could see enough. The bed, the dresser, the mirror on the far wall, and the closet door slightly ajar. The air turned thick. My skin prickled. I wasn't alone. I stepped back, gripping the phone in my hand like it could protect me. Then, click. The hallway light shut off. Darkness swallowed the house. The silence stretched, pressing against my ears. My breathing felt too loud. My heartbeat thundered. Then, from the bedroom, the closet door creaked open. I ran, bolted for the front door. My fingers fumbled with the locks, but my hands were shaking too much. The cold air pressed against my back like something was standing right behind me. Then I heard it. Not a whisper, not a breath, a footstep. Coming from inside the bedroom. Slow, deliberate, like whatever was in there wasn't in a hurry. I yanked the door open and ran into the night. I ran into the cold, into the night, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My bare feet hit the pavement as I sprinted down the driveway. I didn't stop until I reached my car. My hands fumbled for the keys in my pocket, shaking, slippery with sweat. Finally, I got the door open and threw myself inside. I slammed the lock down. For a second, I sat there, panting, gripping the wheel. Then, through the windshield, I saw it. The house. From the outside, it looked normal. The same dull house I had walked into just hours before, but something felt different. The front door was still open. I was sure I had closed it behind me. And inside, deep in the darkness of the hallway, I saw someone standing there. Not moving, not shifting, just waiting. The shape was too tall, too thin, its face hidden in shadows. Then it did something that made my stomach drop. He stepped forward. Not a normal step, too smooth, too fast, like it was gliding. I turned the key in the ignition. The car wouldn't start. I twisted the key again, harder. The engine sputtered. The thing inside the house moved again. I slammed my hand against the dashboard. Come on, come on! Another step. Now it was at the threshold of the house. The porch light flickered. I yanked my phone out, but the screen was blank. No service, no time, just nothing. Another step. Now it was on the porch. I saw it clearly for the first time. It looked like me. The same face, same clothes, same shaking hands. It lifted its hand and waved, like it was saying goodbye. My stomach twisted. No, that's not me. The engine roared to life. I slammed my foot on the gas, tires screeching as I sped down the street. I didn't look back. Not until I was miles away, not until I reached a motel and locked myself in. Only then did I check my phone. The screen was still blank, except for one notification. Home has been updated. Welcome back. The snow wasn't normal. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. Shadows cast by the porch light, tricks of the wind. But the longer I stared, the clearer it became. The snow had faces. I stood in my front yard, breath fogging in the cold night air. The entire town had been buried under a blizzard, the thickest snowfall in decades. But under the dim streetlights, I could see them. Hundreds of faces pressed into the snowbanks, not carved, not natural. Frozen expressions of agony, mouths open in silent screams. I shivered, stepping back toward the house. Maybe it was just the way the snow had fallen. Maybe I was overtired. But then, one of the faces moved. My heart slammed against my ribs. The impression in the snow, where the mouth had been, shifted. The lips curled back. The eyes hollowed deeper. I turned and ran inside, slamming the door shut. My hands were shaking. From the window, I looked out again. The faces were gone, just smooth, untouched snow. I told myself I was imagining things, but the unease stayed. By morning, the snowfall had stopped. The town looked peaceful, a white sheet of ice covering everything. No footprints, no tire marks, no sounds. I stepped outside cautiously, my boots crunching on the frozen ground. The moment I looked down, my blood ran cold. There was a new face in the snow, and it was mine. I staggered back, my breath catching in my throat. The face in the snow, my face, was perfect. Every detail, the slope of my nose, the curve of my lips, even the tiny scar above my eyebrow. It was like someone had pressed my head into the ice while I slept. But I hadn't. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to breathe. Maybe this was some kind of prank. Maybe the wind had carved it, or I was just seeing things. Then the eyes blinked. I froze. It wasn't snow. It wasn't ice. The face, my face, was alive. I took a slow step back. The mouth in the snow began to move. It spoke. Not out loud, not in words. Inside my head. It's cold down here. My stomach twisted. The voice was mine, but not mine. It was emptier. Hollow. The snow beneath my feet shifted. The wind didn't blow it, it breathed. The entire ground exhaled. I turned and ran. Back inside, I locked the door. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone. I needed to tell someone, anyone. No service. Outside, the wind howled. The snow swirled higher, pushing against my windows. Then, footsteps, crunching, slow, right outside my door. I peeked through the peephole. Nothing. just snow. Empty, untouched snow. But the footsteps didn't stop. They circled the house. Crunch, crunch, crunch. I pressed my back against the door, my heart pounding. Something was out there. Then, through the window, my own reflection, not in the glass, standing outside, a perfect copy of me, staring back, expressionless, motionless, eyes black and empty. It raised its hand and knocked, once. Then the voice whispered again, "Let me in." I backed away from the door, shaking my head. No, this wasn't real. But the knock came again. 1, 2, 3. Slow, deliberate. My reflection, the thing outside, tilted its head, its mouth curled into something like a smile, but it was wrong. Stretched too wide, teeth too white, too sharp. It knocked again. I clamped my hands over my ears. I didn't want to hear it speak again. I didn't want that voice inside my head. Let me in. The whisper wasn't coming from outside anymore. It was inside the house. I turned so fast I nearly tripped. My breath came in short, panicked gasps. My own house felt different. The walls seemed too narrow, the shadows deeper. The air was thick, heavy, like the house itself was waiting for something. And then, footsteps. Not from the front door, from the hallway. Slow, steady footsteps. I wasn't alone. My knees nearly buckled. I reached for the nearest thing, a fire poker from the fireplace. My hand shook as I gripped it tight, my back pressed against the wall. The footsteps grew closer. Then I saw it. Another me, standing at the end of the hallway, its head tilted, watching. It was wearing my clothes, but they were covered in frost. The tips of its fingers were blue, ice forming along its knuckles, and its eyes, black voids. It took a slow step forward. I raised the fire poker, my chest heaving. "What do you want?" It blinked. Then it spoke. "You let me out." My mind snapped. The faces in the snow, the breath beneath the ice, the whispers. This thing, it had been buried, trapped beneath the snow, and now it was free. And I swung the fire poker. It went straight through, like I was hitting nothing but air. The thing laughed, a horrible, crackling sound like ice splitting open. Then it whispered, "Time to switch places." The lights flickered, the air turned freezing. My breath came out in white puffs. The walls shifted. Or maybe I did. My vision blurred, my body feeling too light. I blinked.